How's it going, everybody? Good to see you again. Feels like it's been a good minute since the last meeting. As usual, we got a couple of things to go over. We got our club announcements, logo update. We're going to be talking about a new feature we want to roll out, the BAP program. I'm sure a few of y'all have heard of. Curtis is going to be covering that for us. Of course, we got Cassandra giving our talk, and then our raffle at the end. So I don't think I got over the mission statement. I think y'all got that down pat. Of course, we keep doing our banner contest. I won this month, so I guess I'm voted out for the next year. It's bittersweet. Our next meeting, June 11th, will be here, so we'll come the following month, back to normal. And if there's anybody that's looking to get the newsletter on email, maybe you're not as big into Facebook as a lot of people, or you still like to go through that method, we've got a newsletter going out, and it seems to be doing really good. Had a lot of positive feedback. We wanted to ask, we didn't know what we wanted to cover for Aquaticon, so we figured we'd just bring the subject up and ask if anybody had any experience they want to speak on, or questions about it, or any feedback or anything like that. If anybody had any comments.
I had a great time.
Yeah, I was going to say it was a lot of fun.
I don't know, I definitely had a blast. I think my voice was a little hazy. I don't know, Mitchell, I don't know how you did it.
My voice was shot. It was gone.
So I feel like he went.
I
was going to say, I feel like he must have went home and just collapsed.
I was wishing there was more freshwater stuff there.
Yeah.
It was like very lacking in that.
Yeah, there was definitely a lot of us that felt that too, but being a first event, it was hard for everybody to bite down, which, you know, I'm not defending by any means, but there was a few people that backed out the last minute, and hopefully, you know, this will just be the set for next year. If he keeps it.
The freshwater that was there did very well. I pretty much sold out of everything. Plants, fish, everything.
Yeah, we're hoping maybe they'll realize that, you know, that's where a lot more of their money is going to end up being, not so much the saltwater, which saltwater is great, but like I said, everybody was yearning for the freshwater. So hopefully they'll pick up off of that. Let's see, our logos, of course y'all are familiar with that. We got 2 different shirt designs going and possibly working on a third. We've got our stickers. As you can see, mostly the same as last time, maybe a couple alterations, kind of some of the ideals that we got going here. And if anybody's got any suggestions for that, you can always throw it our way. We're always looking for what we should do next. And of course, we've got some shirts and stickers if anybody's interested in it. And then with that, I'm gonna go ahead and turn it over to Curtis and tell you about our new program.
Okay, so we talked about wanting to kind of increase our club and what we're doing in our club and kind of get everybody a little bit more involved. So we're going to do the Breeders Awards program. It's pretty simple. Has anybody heard about that before at other clubs, anything like it? Okay, so it's in a nutshell, it's an incentive program for you to breed. And it benefits, you know, other club members is what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to benefit the club in general, and it's supposed to pique everybody's interest a little bit. So the purpose of it is to, you know, just breed aquatic life and share your spawns with the rest of the club. So it's nice for Jim here to breed his guppies, but it'd be nice if, you know, Steve got to have them, or Amy got to have them in the end, or just a few of them, and then 3 years down the line, you know, something happens to his tank, something weird happens to his tank, something weird, and we've got a line, and so it's to encourage you to share amongst your members, because ultimately we're just supposed to be amongst friends here at this point. I mean, that's why we always encourage no sales in this club, because the fact that we really want you guys to and us to share amongst I never charge my buddy for a fish that he wants. I'm like, hey, you want it? Take it, you know, sort of thing. So that's what we're kind of trying to encourage. So this is a little bit more of an in detail. It's to make available to the hobby a little wider variety of fishes and to recognize the achievements of the members. Like I said, I'm just going to do kind of a nutshell on this whole thing. If you're interested in this program, then essentially just shoot me a PM and we'll go from there. I've got the rules the description of the classes, and the point descriptions. And so it goes through every type of fish that you can ever imagine, I think. So what we'll do is we're gonna form a committee. This is gonna be our first committee. So everybody is amongst the chair or the board. We've decided that I was gonna be the chair of this committee. And as a result, I think 2 members to help me with this. So it's open to whoever thinks, and I would like it to be people who show up to the meetings, not just people who are just on Facebook. You actually need to be there because there's going to be some participation involved. I mean, you're going to need to go to Kane's house maybe, or watch some video that Kane shot of his, cichlids that have bred to verify and stuff like that. So there's going to be a little bit of involvement. That's what we want. We want more people involved. So this is not just my club or your club. It's everybody's club. And so that's what we're trying to encourage. So there is going to be a cost for it if you want to enter into it, and that is simply so that we don't have to go by the standard of what typical Breeders' Awards programs do is they say, all right, I've bred my guppies. In order for me to get points through the Breeders' Awards program, then you're supposed to donate X amount of fish to the club. They sell those fish, and then the club gets the $10 from it, and that's how you pay for the awards and stuff like that. The board, we kind of decided we don't want to be that hard line about it, and plus we really don't have the ability to hold, all of Donnie's crayfish that he bred for the year, and he's bred till the swap. We don't have a way to hold these, so that's something I'm going to need the committee to help me kind of figure out. Hey, what do we want to do? How do we want to, hold fish? And so we're going to have just a simple entry fee. And then we'll come up with, is it every 5 spawns that you do that we would like you to donate 3 fish, 5? I mean, we'll come up with some of the rules when it comes to that, because once again, we are a small club that doesn't really have any hardline set rules. It's our rules. Come on in, Rob. So we're going to come up with some stuff like that. So some of the things that's pretty cool about it, and I have this description of classes. No, I did not sit here, go through every class and say, oh, you get 6 points for this. I cheated like crazy. Why reinvent the wheel? I mean, you just go through and it'll give you like points for certain live bears, anabantoids, barbs, rainbow fish, and it gives you 5 points, 10 points, 15 points, 20 points. And then as you breed and get all your stuff going, I think it's on the back is where I have this. It is this one.
The award level is on the order.
The first one? Oh yeah, good.
Right there.
Perfect, thanks, Mitch. So then when you get into it, you get 50 points, you're an intro breeder, and we're gonna give you an award. We're gonna do it once a year for now. I mean, maybe this thing goes crazy and we're like, hey, that once a year Breeders' Awards program takes up the whole thing. That's ridiculous. Well, we can do it once every 3 months, but in the beginning, we're gonna do it once a year. And then so it gives you all the levels, and once you get up to the expert breeder, all this other stuff, I mean your points accumulate and stuff like that. So it's not only fish, there are some like shrimp and stuff like that. There are other things. You can get some shrimp points on. You got mutt shrimp going on right there. She's got her points already. Something flew off. So I mean, it's a work in progress. It's nothing set in stone. I want some assistance on this is more or less what I'm getting at. So once again, whoever thinks they want to help with this afterwards, you can come up to me and talk to me, or on Facebook you can shoot me a PM and we can go from there, and we'll form this committee and we'll get this thing off the ground. So I don't think there's any more that I really needed to go into detail, because honestly, if you're not interested in this, you probably don't want to hear about it. If you are interested in this, then I'll send you the entire ETA BAP program, all the descriptions of classes, everything like that. I've got it all in email form that I can just send you, so if you're interested in it. So I hope to get some people out to really help. I think it's going to be really cool for our club. It'd be really neat to see.
I had a question about those award levels. Are we able to put that on Facebook? Like, can you custom those like titles on Facebook? With like group experts and whatnot?
We can look at
I yield to that man.
I don't know if you guys know if those are custom or not.
I'm pretty sure there's a custom badge.
Might be.
Is there? Because that would be cool to label that in the Facebook.
That's a good idea. I mean, stuff like that is stuff like the board and the committee. Anybody who has an idea like that, spit it out. I mean, that's what we need is help on stuff like this. So, any questions regarding this?
I want to touch on one thing before you do turn it over.
Fire away.
Curtis had mentioned something about the sales. We don't really want to harp on it or be big brother, but obviously we know, you know, some people breed their fish to sell, and we obviously know you want to make money on fish. I sell fish, you know, but we just, as a club, don't want that to be our face or our focal point. Obviously, what I always say is, we all know what you do in your DMs. None of us know, and we don't have to. That's your business. If you want to deal with somebody, you can message them. Or what you do outside of this building is what your business. We just don't want to be the face of this group is for selling fish and we're cutting the store out of business, and it just not as professional as an image. You know, we just want to be more into promoting the hobby and building friendships and things like that.
And we need the support of our fish stores. We as a group need Kenny has reached out to us. We've all talked to people at the aquarium. We need their support. And so if they understand we're just we're here as a resource, we're not here to cut their legs out. Like Kane said, we all have fish for sale.
Right.
or giveaway or something like that. So
yeah, we don't want you to think we're anti-sale or anything like that. We just don't want, that's not our jobs, you know.
Also, it's against Facebook's rules for live animal sales, so not to get the club shut down, we can't have that on our page.
And the way that works, it's weird. I know a lot of groups do it and you never see anything, but the ones that get shut down just disappear and they're just gone. So there's really no way to track how often they do it or what flags it. I've heard dollar signs. Just putting dollar signs in your post can flag it and they'll check it. So.
I got flagged for selling a fish tank one time because it says the word fish tank instead of aquarium.
Yeah.
And they literally said, you're not allowed to sell for 30 days, or you're not allowed to post anything for 30 days. So I had to write them and say, dude, this is an aquarium. And the reason they flagged me because I said the word fish tank and I had a picture of a set-up tank that had fish in it.
Yeah.
So it does happen. So.
And one thing that it promotes within the group is that we get to know each other and find out, hey, this person breeds that, and this person has this, and they do bring duckweed sometimes to the group. If I want duckweed, I'll message that person. We start building. we start building our own relationships and friendships, and not just posting on Facebook, hey, I'm looking for this. More of, oh, this person brought that. And get in touch with them. Have a conversation.
All right, cool. Anybody have any questions about the BAP program? Does anybody here think they're going to help me? Come on, everybody stick your hands out. We got Cassandra. Okay, good. Great. That's all I need. I'm really, just a couple people is all it takes to get this off the ground. And just for verification, one of the things that Kane had brought up to me, kind of kidding at Aquaticon, is like, how do you verify if someone bred, something like this? And it's like, if you really feel like lying about all these things to get, a tag on Facebook, have at it. It's gonna be a lot more work than, would have been a lot easier, let your fish spawn and then record that. Yeah. So it's pretty funny. There's no way to get there's no way to catch every liar, but it's supposed to be. There's no competition. It's not like you don't get to walk around with a hat that says, ETA intermittent breeder.
But you will get recognition at the end.
We're gonna figure it out on Facebook. You already ordered hats. Well, I already ordered stickers to go on your hat. So, all right, so good.
You have printed copies if anybody wants to.
I didn't print out any copies because I wanted you to I'll email it to you. Yeah. Okay. And so, all right, with that, let's turn it over to Cassandra. She's got a live foods talk, and I think that's all I really need to say. Everybody should know Cassandra at this point. She's all over Facebook telling us what to do on this.
And she's been here all
Awesome.
night.
I do. I post way too much on Facebook. Go over here and get my notes, get my presentation set up. I guess this is my intro slide. How do you start this thing? I don't know how to use PowerPoint.
It's down the bottom.
Great fish, you can't chew back.
Let's put it up.
Just go up and
Cute much.
They are cute.
They were specific.
They are cute.
We couldn't have them.
Have you looked at them? They're adorable.
I saw a cute Daphnia pulex. I really should have that. Adorable.
All right, y'all. I'm going to be throwing a lot of information at you. I'll try to get through it as quickly as possible. If you have questions or comments or anything, just shout them out as I go through here. I'm going to give you guys a little bit of an intro. I'm standing right in front of the thing. I'm going to give you a little bit of an intro, and then I'm going to do like a laundry list, how to do this. I wrote this presentation specifically for you all, knowing that a lot of you have never kept live foods. A lot of you have tried and failed. So this is a presentation I've never given before, bear with me. Let's get into it. So these are all just little videos of my various cultures. You can see them all up on the table over there if you go. So first and foremost, why even bother, right? There are a lot of great reasons to feed live foods to your fish. And the first one I like is to induce breeding. Fish that are fed on a diet of flakes or processed foods, sometimes all they need to spawn is just a live food. They go crazy over them. They'll help bring out some of the colors in your fish. Live foods have things that, your highly processed junk foods don't really have in them. Feeding flake food is pretty much the equivalent of going out and buying a Soylent Green or something. It's just better overall for the health of your fishes. Also, the type of fish that I usually keep are killifish, and they don't really take too well to flake foods. So I've kind of had to learn how to culture at least some live foods to get them going. And a lot of the babies that I have, the fry that I have from these fish, are way too small for even things like a baby brine shrimp. So I've had to learn how to improvise, grow green water, infusoria, and all kinds of crazy stuff for them. So when I bring up live foods to people, I get 3 major points that people push back on. Anybody want to guess what they are?
Too much work.
Too much work. I don't have the damn time for it. Right?
Gross.
I was gonna say icky.
Icky. Okay, I've never heard that one before, but yeah, I can totally see how they can be icky. Some of them can smell sometimes, and sometimes you get mosquitoes and stuff, and that's not good. So the second one that I have is I don't have the room for it. I've got fish tanks all over my house. I don't have room for another container just for food, right? And the last one, this one happens all the time. I tried it once, it failed. I don't know what I did wrong, and I'm probably just not going to try it again. I've got answers for all of these things. It's not a problem. You don't have time? No problem. You don't have room? No problem. You tried it once and failed? I'm going to set you up for success very easily. So stop your whining. So, if you don't have time, you don't have room, if you tried once and failed, go wild. All it takes to grow a mosquito larva, which fish go crazy for, is a container of water. Put a container of water outside. It doesn't matter how big it is, doesn't matter where it is. You can put it in the sun, you can put it in the shade. You don't have to put anything in it. You don't even have to dechlorinate the water. Stick a container outside, you will get mosquito larvae. Now, as that container matures, or if you put something else in it, like say leaf litter, or I like to use black cow sometimes as dried cow manure, gives a lot of good nutrients for the cultures outside. You'll get things like bloodworms, you'll get glassworms. I don't think we need the sound here. Okay. Other things I find in my live cultures, ostracods, you'll see, these are mostly mosquito larvae here swarming around. These are ostracods, they call them seed shrimp. They just appear out of nowhere. You'll get scuds, you can get, they call Psychotidae larvae, mothfly larvae, drainfly larvae, and they're all good food for fish. You don't have to do anything other than have a container of water. So, again, just to set it up, stick a container outside. You can put some leaf litter in it. If you want to harvest without going in there and getting a container, you don't want all the gross water or whatever else might be in there, take a brine shrimp net or a fine sieve, scoop them out, rinse them off, plop them in the tank. Nice and easy. You don't need to do any maintenance on them. If you stick it in a place where there's rainfall, the container will maintain itself. You stick it somewhere where it's shady so the evaporation doesn't take place too much, and you can just leave it there. I've got a water trough out in my forest that was set up 20 years ago and forgotten about, and it produces thousands of mosquito larvae and seed shrimp and daphnia and whatever else is in there. So here's some easy no-time foods, right? If you don't have time to take care of a culture, what do? Raise some scuds, raise some snails, raise some seed shrimp, ostracods. They're tiny, tiny little crustaceans. Fish go crazy for them. The ostracods, not so much. Some fish are not, they find them too hard to bite down on. But if you have things like a tooth carp, like a killifish, like I keep, or US native fish, they will usually take really well to the seed shrimp. The scuds are a little bit bigger. Depending on the variety, there's several different varieties of scuds. Some of them will get up to maybe about that big or so. So if you keep some larger fish, scuds are good for some larger fish. You can separate them out and feed the baby scuds to smaller fish, and the fish will go crazy for them. You don't have to do too much to them either. If you've got a container full of water and some leaf litter, you don't have to do anything for them. Scuds will eat the leaf litter, they're detritivores. Ostracods will eat the leaf litter, they're detritivores. Snails will eat the litter. If you want to give them a special treat, you can throw in an algae wafer, you can blanch some vegetables and throw some vegetables in there. It really doesn't matter. If you keep the container inside, you'll probably want to do a water change about once a week. If you keep it outside and it has access to rainfall and doesn't evaporate too much, you really don't have to do anything to it at all. So vinegar eels are another very, very small food. They're technically a type of nematode. If you get a container, split half and half apple cider vinegar and water, they will maintain themselves. You don't need to do anything to them. This container here, I restart this every 6 months or so. I'll just mix up a brand new apple cider vinegar and water mixture and take some of the vinegar eels out, dump them in the new one. No time. You don't need to check on them, you don't need to feed them, you don't need to change the water, you don't need to put anything else in there. I've got on the right side here what they call hyperdense vinegar eel culture. This is something relatively newish that I've discovered through talking to other hobbyists. It's a little bit more maintenance because it does get when you first set it up, it'll get a little skin on it, so you've got to stir it up every once in a while. And they do like to be oxygenated, so every other day or so, go in there and stir it up. But you can produce a lot more on these, and they're a lot easier to harvest because they just crawl up the sides of the container. Very easy, and you can see I just make a mixture of oat milk, and again, the diluted apple cider vinegar, very easy.
Could you describe the harvest on the bottle?
Yeah, for sure. So there's a couple different ways you can do it. You can reach your finger in there or a Q-tip in there, and that's a pain in the butt, right? You could pour a little bit out and strain it through a coffee filter. That works just fine. Put them on the coffee filter, rinse them with a little bit of water, then you can just swish the coffee filter into your tank. Nice and easy. I keep them in these bottles here with the skinny necks because what you can do is you can stick this cotton ball down on top of the water line here, the vinegar line here, and you can put dechlorinated water or water from your fish tank, you can just put it on top of the cotton ball. What will happen is the vinegar eels will swim up through the cotton ball into the fresh water that's separated from the apple cider vinegar, and you can just use a pipette or something, and you can just pour it off into the tank. Very, very easy. So these are some of my favorites. Grindleworms and whiteworms. Grindleworms are probably within the killifish realm. They're probably one of the most popular foods to keep. They're very easy. If you don't have a lot of room, you don't need a lot of room. If you have space to put a takeout container, Chinese food container, you have space to raise grindle worms. It's very, very simple. You can raise them on a soil media or coconut coir or peat moss. Recently, you can see here, I've been experimenting with a sponge method. So these green scouring pads that you buy at the grocery store, take 2 of those, get them a little bit damp, stick them in there. They work just fine. Once a month, I'll take out one of the sponges, I'll rinse it off underwater and stick it in the container. The next month, I'll do the other sponge. With soil media, you're going to want to restart them every couple months, every 3 to 6 months, because they will foul the soil. They're living creatures, so they do excrete things into the soil. Eventually, they will crash if you don't take care of them. But it's pretty easy to maintain them. You feed them whatever, basically. They're worms. They will eat pretty much anything. Dried cat food, dog food. I feed them fish food, just regular flakes. The only reason I ever buy fish flakes is to feed 2 live cultures. I don't feed fish flakes to my fish. I've done really well on a mixture of bread and kefir and nutritional yeast flakes. So what I'll do is I'll take a piece of bread. I use whole wheat bread, but it doesn't really matter what you use. Dry out the piece of bread in a toaster, smush it up into breadcrumbs, add the nutritional yeast flakes into it at about 50-50 mix. And that add enough yogurt or enough kefir to make like a slurry, like a thin paste. And they will go crazy for that. I've experimented with a lot of foods for these particular cultures, and that's what has worked the best for me. This picture of this culture, this little video here I took 2 days ago after the culture had crashed. So about 3 weeks ago, that culture had basically nothing in it. And after 3 weeks of feeding this mixture, you can see the population has exploded. Harvesting for these things is relatively easy as well. As you can see, they'll climb up the side of the container just like the other ones. Or what I like to do, you can kind of see it up here. You can take a little piece of plastic or this crochet knitting canvas. They sell that at Walmart in the hobby arts and crafts section. You can just cut that down and lay it on top of the culture, right on top of the food, and the worms will crawl all over it. You can just take that off and you can dunk it in the tank. The main difference, the biggest difference between white worms and grindle worms, other than their size, white worms are much bigger than grindle worms, is the temperature you need to keep them at. Grindle worms will do just fine at pretty much any room temperature. It's comfortable for you, it's comfortable for the grindle worms. White worms need a little bit of special care. I keep them in a wine fridge. They need to be at ideally about 50-60 degrees. So a regular refrigerator would be a little bit too cold for them, but a wine fridge works great. I got a used one off of Facebook Marketplace, and it does just fine. Now this is another great food to feed if you don't have much room. Again, this is just a takeout food container, or one of those reusable food containers you can get at the store. Microworms, banana worms, and Walter worms are the same species of nematode. They're technically different sizes and they reproduce at different rates. So microworms are the largest and they'll reproduce the slowest. Banana worms are going to be in the middle, and Walter worms are going to be the smallest. If you're looking at it, Derek and I were talking about this earlier, if you look at them with your naked eye, I've never been able to see a difference. But if you read scientific texts and whatever, it'll tell you Walter worms are smaller, supposedly. I've used these specifically for raising fry. These are a little bit smaller than baby brine shrimp. So they're great if you have really super teeny fry that aren't ready to take baby brine shrimp yet, and they're highly nutritious. These are cultured on a media of oatmeal, and when you first set up a culture, you can sprinkle just a few grains, when I say a few, maybe 5 or 6 grains of activated yeast. Just regular bread yeast, Fleischmann's, whatever is a very popular brand. What they'll do is the bacteria will grow on the yeast, and the yeast will break down the oatmeal culture, and then the microworms will eat that bacteria. Harvesting for these is really easy. You can see here they climb up the walls of the container. So what I'll do is I'll just take my finger, wipe down the walls of the container, and plop them in the tank. They do need to be kept oxygenated. So on all my cultures, I have lids, cut out a hole in the lid, and I'll put a piece of cotton ball in there. That's to keep the moth flies out, the drain flies out, so you don't want the cultures to get contaminated with them because it gets gross. You will want to stir these about every other day just to make sure they've got enough oxygen in there. They'll do better if you do. Once the cultures start to crash, it's very easy to see the oatmeal will break down into kind of like a watery, gross substance. It'll start to smell a little bit. Eventually it'll turn brown, and if you keep letting it go, it'll turn from brown to black. And once that starts happening, that's when you know you need to restart your culture. I personally restart these about every 3 or 4 weeks. And I keep multiple containers just in case of a crash. These are my Daphnias. Oh, there are over 200 species of Daphnia. I'm not going to get into them all. These are the most common types we keep in the hobby. From largest to smallest, we've got Daphnia magna. They're still super, super, super tiny. Daphnia pulex are a little bit smaller, so they're a great size if you have nanofish, or if you have fry that are a little bit larger, like an adolescent type fry. They're a great intermediate food to get them from baby brine shrimp to something larger. Moina are just a little bit smaller than Daphnia pulex. They're technically not Daphnia. They're very closely related though, and you culture them basically the same way. And then Cereodaphnia. Cereodaphnia babies are much, much smaller than baby brine shrimp. They make a great food for fry. The adults are about the same size as a baby brine shrimp, or maybe a little bit bigger. So the Cereodaphnia, I think, are about 400 microns, and the baby brine shrimp are 200 or so. So there's not much of a size difference. Taking care of these is different depending on how you want to do it and how much you want to produce. The thing about Daphnia is they go in cycles sometimes. They call it a boom crash. So you'll see your container will take off. There will be so many Daphnia. It'll be super duper dense. And then a couple days will go by and there's no more there. So what do you do in the meantime? You harvest, you harvest, you harvest. You can split the container. I always recommend if you're keeping any kind of Daphnia, have at least 2 containers going. That way, if one booms and then crashes, you've got a backup handy. If you keep them inside, do a water change once or twice a week. They really, really like fresh water. They do not tolerate basically any kind of contamination in the water. You cannot put any water with chlorine at all inside the tank. Even if you're using a dechlorinator, some of them are sensitive to other chemicals that come in dechlorinator. A lot of dechlorinator have preservatives inside to keep the bottles from going bad or from starting to stink. Daphnia don't like that. So what I do when I do the water changes, I'll use aged water from my fish tanks. I'll siphon out some water from the fish tanks and put it back in the Daphnia container. Feeding them is relatively easy. They love green water. If you keep the container under a bright light, the light will produce enough green water to maintain a little bit of the culture. You can supplement feeding with yeast powder, spirulina powder, chlorella powder. You can buy that all off of Amazon, or you can get it at the grocery store. If you want to keep them outside, it's a little bit easier. Like I said before, if you just put a container outside, make sure it's in a shady spot that doesn't evaporate off the water too much, and let rainfall go into it. It'll maintain itself. Use leaf litter or black cow or something. You don't really have to feed them actively if you've got something like that in there. Most people think of Daphnia as a filter feeder, and they are, but Daphnia will also graze on algae or things that are decaying in there. So keeping them in a container outside with leaf litter is a really easy way to just have a culture of Daphnia that you don't really need to pay any attention to.
Quick question on that. How do you do a water change for those?
So with these, what I'll do is I'll use an air line, so just a small diameter hose. I'll suck that out into, I'll put it in one of these buckets, but at the end of the line, I'll put a baby brine shrimp net or a piece of stocking or something to catch them all. And as the water drains, they'll obviously get sucked up through the tube, catch them in the sieve or catch them in the brine shrimp net, and you can either return them back to the culture or you can use that to feed the fish.
My question was about, you said to me earlier about keeping mosquitoes out with mosquito dunks. Do they compete against them for resources? Is that why, or why are you trying to keep the mosquitoes out?
Just because I don't want mosquitoes everywhere.
Okay. Well, mine may have gone through a crash, but my mosquitoes are everywhere, so they don't compete?
They will compete for food. So mosquitoes will also, basically the same thing. They'll filter algae from the water. They'll eat the E. coli bacteria from black cow or whatever. So they will compete for food. I personally, the containers that I keep, I've never seen the Daphnia completely die off just because there's mosquitoes in there. But if you don't want the mosquitoes in there, what you can do is buy these things called mosquito dunks, and they sell them at Lowe's or any other hardware store, co-op, whatever. The mosquito dunks they produce a bacteria that is very specific to mosquito larvae and will kill the mosquito larvae while leaving the Daphnia alone. A very good tip. It's the last one. I went pretty quick. Okay. The blackworms, everybody's favorites, right? A lot of people say that my fish only started breeding when I fed them blackworms. So that's probably not exactly true. They probably just like the live food. The blackworms are really popular in the hobby. Unfortunately, they produce very, very, very slowly. If you want a good amount of blackworms, you'll probably need a large container for them. They reproduce by fragmentation. So if you keep them in a container that has a sharp gravel or crushed coral or something, they will, as they crawl through the substrate, they will split themselves on these sharp rocks, and then the two halves will form two new worms. Feeding them is really easy. Stick an algae wafer in there sometimes. They'll do really well. You can use a turkey baster to scoop them out, suck them out, and pop them in your tank. They do get pretty dirty. They will smell a little bit if you don't keep the water changed. So you change the water about every week, or if you keep them outside, again, you can probably rely on rainfall to keep your containers. That's pretty much it, right? You'll notice there is one food that's really popular in the hobby that I didn't mention, and that's brine shrimp. I don't bother with baby brine shrimp because I don't keep saltwater tanks. I don't keep brackish water tanks. I don't want to mess with mixing salt water. I don't want to have to go out and buy salt water. I think the thing with brine shrimp is that people don't really do well usually maintaining a population. What people will normally do is they'll buy eggs, brine shrimp eggs, and then they'll hatch eggs in the container. Well, that's all well and good, but then you're constantly in a cycle buying more eggs, and hatching out these eggs, and having these saltwater containers that eventually get very crusty and need to be cleaned out every once in a while. All of the other foods that I mentioned are just as nutritious, and some of them are smaller than brine shrimp, baby brine shrimp. There's really no need to mess with it if you're only keeping freshwater. If you do keep saltwater, then great. It's probably really easy to just take some saltwater out of your tank and set up a little hatching container of brine shrimp. But personally, it's too much work for me. Keeping microworms is much, much easier. Keeping Cereodaphnia is much, much easier.
Corey from Aquarium Co-op has a video where he talks about doing brine shrimp in a saltwater tub, basically.
Yeah.
And he just throws the eggs in the tub with an air line in it and scoops them out whenever he wants. And they breed and everything.
Yeah.
I've never tried it myself, but I was thinking about setting one of those up.
You could totally do that. You can feed them on spirulina powder or some other green water algae. They'll do pretty well. But you have to have that dedicated setup with the dedicated saltwater. If you're not into saltwater already, that could be a hassle sometimes.
Question about like tadpoles and snails and their poop. What's the benefits to that, to all these microcultures and stuff like that, like Daphnia?
There's a little bit of benefit to having some snails inside of your Daphnia tanks or other ones because they will clean up whatever the other things don't eat. They tend to not foul the water too much, so you don't really need to worry about it that much as long as you're doing your weekly water changes or twice weekly water changes for them.
So I will say, comment before the question to the brine shrimp. I definitely like using baby brine shrimp a lot, but I'll agree with you that it's definitely a lot of work, and I'm either full on or full off. I'll do it every day for a few weeks, and the next thing I know, I'm like, yeah, I don't feel like doing it today, and a month later, I'm like, I need to do it again. So
Right?
I will say, one downside is if you're doing it every day, it's great, but then when you don't do it, it's the lack of it there. It's kind of detrimental.
Yeah, for sure. Meanwhile, you could have a container of leaf litter and Cereodaphnia in the corner somewhere, forget about it. When you go back to it a week later, you've got thousands of them.
The question I had was, I kind of do like the water-based cultures a lot more. I haven't played a lot with outside, but I was wondering for inside, for like scuds and Daphnia, if it's different, that's fine. What would be like the minimum size container you'd recommend?
So I've got I think it's a 3-gallon shoebox. It's a plastic shoebox that I got from Walmart that I raise scuds in, and I will co-culture them. It's one thing I didn't mention up to now. It's co-cultures. You can raise more than one food in a container. So I will co-culture these scuds with Cereodaphnia in this little teeny, it's about the size of a shoebox, maybe 3 gallons or so. And that produces enough to feed maybe once or twice a week, depending on how many fish you have.
You can get those containers at the dollar store.
Yeah, for sure.
That one that I have sitting up here filled with cryptocorn, I paid $1 for it. It's about 3 gallons, the exact thing. It's got a lid and everything on it.
Yep,
So.
nice and easy.
You can do that. Oh, sorry.
Infusoria.
Yes.
I tried doing the blanched broccoli in the tank water and stir it and put it in a windowsill.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell at what point I actually had infusoria. The water was cloudy.
Yeah, that's the point where you have it.
Bingo.
They're
I
way
thought
too
it
small to
just had
see usually.
Cloudy.
You fixed it.
It just, and this is what we feed very, very tiny fry.
Yes, your tiniest fry. Just feed
So
them that
trust
cloudy
that
water.
cloudy water.
Yeah. If your water is white cloudy, you've probably got infusoria or paramecium. If your water is green cloudy, then you've got some kind of chlorella or some kind of freshwater algae.
So it takes like about a week or so.
Yeah.
I give up too early.
Yeah.
That's without,
It does stink though.
Yes, it does.
that's without any kind of seeding or anything.
Yeah, you don't need to do anything to it. Container of dechlorinated water, blanched vegetable, leave it in the sun, it'll rot and
Don't use broccoli, that's your smell. Broccoli stinks anyway, so use something like a squash or a cucumber or something like that. You won't.
Or
So
rabbit
smell bad.
pellets, like you buy at the
Yeah, they're into the
store.
rabbit.
Not the ones that come out of rabbit. But yeah, get those alfalfa pellets. That's you just need 1 per a gallon container. You never even need to do it again. You can get that off the store floor when you walk past the display.
Oh, okay.
May or may not have done that, so. Pretty easy. We're done. We're gonna do our raffle. Okay. Thank you, Cassandra. One more question. How many of all the cultures did you bring one of, at least some of all of these?
I have everything except blackworms and scuds.
Okay. So here's our raffle board.
One more thing.
Okay.
Can you post that presentation on the Facebook page?
Yes, certainly. We'll make the slides available for everybody.
Also, you just did an interview with,
Oh, yes, I just did I shot footage for a YouTube video with another member here, Sean Peck. So if you follow Peck Tech on YouTube, that video will be up soon, I hope.
hey, JT.
Jason, I thought you were right.
Is this what we're pulling?
I was not prepared for this at all, so I'm gonna wing this real quick. I have hear a lot of people say they can't keep cherry shrimp. I don't know why you can't keep cherry shrimp. I have cherry shrimp in a tub on my front porch that have been there for 8 years. I do nothing to it. It freezes in the winter. It thaws in the summer. It doesn't have any filtration. It has fish in it when the season permits, and I pull them out and they go inside and they go back out when it's warm. So cherry shrimp to me are like the most bulletproof thing I have ever kept in this hobby. I have them in every tank. The only way I have stopped cherry shrimp is by fish that will eat them. So
That's your live food?
it is the easiest thing. Yeah, I use them as live food too. I have so many of them.
No reason not to.
They're in my 300-gallon ponds as biofiltration. They help eat and break down waste and things like that. They're just hanging out in the sides and the algae. So I don't know what people's problems are with cherry shrimp. I started out with a solo cup of cherry shrimp that I paid $60 for 10 years ago. And I have made thousands and thousands of cherry shrimp a month from that cup. So if you have fresh water and your water is good and you put shrimp in it and you have some plants and some little nooks and crannies for them, you should not have a problem with cherry shrimp. They are, besides a snail, it is the easiest thing I've ever kept in this hobby. Like, they don't require basically anything. They'll eat biofilm off your plants, driftwood, and rocks. You don't even have to feed your shrimp, mostly. If you feed your fish that are with your shrimp, you don't have to feed specifically the shrimp. They'll eat anything, as far as I can tell. I haven't had anything that they've turned down, really. The only time, once in a while, if they start zipping around your tank a bunch, it might be a little hungry. You can drop some food in. But I don't even feed my ones that are outside. They just thrive. I have cherry shrimp in everything. I can't get rid of them, honestly, at this point. If you bought plants from me, you might have got cherry shrimp in those plants. So, yeah, I mean, they're from China originally, so they can take really super cold water temperatures. They can take hot water temperatures. If you keep them in a hotter tank, they will keep their metabolism higher, and they will reproduce much faster, but they won't live as long. So if you keep them colder, they won't reproduce as much, but they'll have a longer lifespan. So if you throw them in the mid-80s, they will reproduce like mad, but they're gonna die fast. So that's about all I would really say on cherry shrimp. I mean, as long as your filter isn't sucking them up and your fish aren't eating them, you shouldn't really have a problem.
All right, I've heard of people changing their water with RO water versus, just out of their sink, more or less. What's the disadvantage to that?
You don't have any minerals or anything in your RO water. It's removed all of your potassium and whatever else, your magnesium, your phosphates, everything your plants need, basically. I know people that do salt water in planted tanks, and they take the waste from their RO systems and put it in their planted tanks. So.
They need that
use RO water is what I would get.
Yeah,
you can
use RO water, but depending on what you're adding to the tank as well. I mean, the shrimp do need a level of calcium. We have really hard water here already anyway.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't really worry about it. Everything that needs hard water that I've ever kept here, I have not had a problem with.
I think you just solved a mystery for me.
What about diluting that, using a 50-50 between tap water? I live in Halls or in Powell, and God knows what we've got in that water. But I started doing a 50-50. I started out trying to do like a 70-30 with tap water, 30 of RO, and I slowly increased it, but everything's still thriving.
Yeah, you can probably just leave water in a bucket too. 24 hours, your chloramines and chloramines have gone already naturally anyway.
Chloramines won't evaporate.
Oh, chloramines don't evaporate? Never mind, don't scratch the chloramines part, they don't evaporate. But chlorine does.
Chlorine will.
I didn't know that part about they breed a lot more when the water temperature is like that, because that's,
Yeah.
I have so many right now, and like, there's nothing that affects them, and.
Yep.
that's
If there's
what I
nothing to
was
eat
like,
them, they
why?
will just go crazy.
Yeah,
They-
that's what it is, yeah.
Yep.
No water temperature.
For the record, I managed to kill off all of mine with rainwater.
Rainwater, really?
I went strictly rainwater in the cage, softness.
Oh, yeah.
Like
They
from
need that
out.
calcium in order to molt.
I know.
Which is crazy because the ones I keep outside in bins just get rainwater. I don't add anything to those bins.
But you probably have the rock and stuff.
There's gravel and leaf litter and all that, so I guess I can
Leaf
trace,
litter will provide the necessary
trace
calcium
elements
for, yeah.
from
One good
that.
thing to add too is, you know, other than highly sensitive fish, a lot of breeders will say, once you get something to breed in your water second time, definitely third time, it's bulletproof. So if you can just kind of get something to spawn in your water, once it's born into that and it's used to it, it's a lot easier to adapt. The next generations will go way better than the first. So if you can get that first initial breed, that kind of sets you in. That's why a lot of people won't chase pH. They just try to make the fish adapt to their water.
Most fish are adapted to pH that is in range of most houses anyway, because most of the fish that we get are from a farm that's farming them off of tap water basically anyway. Most of the fish that we get aren't from the wild anymore. They've been generationally bred already in other water. So I never add anything for pH. I never add anything for KH. I don't own a test kit. I don't test my water for anything. I never do. If something looks wrong with my fish, they're swimming weird, I do a water change. If I see they have white poop, they got parasites. I mean, there's most of the people that I know that are pros that order in lots of fish, they don't even acclimate fish to their water. The fish come in, they cut the bag open, they pour the fish in a net, and they drop it in their tank. Only thing they change for is the temperature. They make sure the temperature is the same, but that's it. No one really that deals with massive volumes of fish does a little drip system, unless it's something super high-end for saltwater stuff that's really touchy and came from the wild and has very specific needs. But yeah, chasing pH and KH is you know, you're gonna spend money at it, you're gonna throw stuff off, you're gonna kill things. Just let your fish adapt. Stability is the main thing that most stuff needs. If you're throwing stuff in and you're adding levels up here and then you do a water change and you drop your level down here on other things, you're gonna have problems. You're gonna add stresses to the fish. Consistency is the main thing. If you don't do water changes and then all of a sudden you start doing a bunch of water changes, you can kill your stuff. So they get used to whatever conditions you keep them in. So that's, again, cherry shrimp though, the easiest thing I've ever kept in my life, honestly. I've had thousands and thousands of them. I'm getting rillies now from mine that they're starting to just pop rillies. I'm getting blue rillies, I'm getting red rillies and stuff just from running them down the line.
I've had some reds pop out too.
Yeah, they're pretty cool. I get a mix of like blue and red, so it's like Spider-Man shrimp almost.
Clear line.
Yeah, like these guys right here.
Yeah, these have.
Is that what that
My question was, what are really?
And they're more
I didn't know
expensive
that.
typically.
I know.
Are they really?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mine
see
just
how-
do that naturally.
see how
All
blue
mine in the
under
tank
there,
are all
white
striped
lines
like
coming
that.
through like that,
Yeah.
it's clear.
It's the gene.
That's not really.
Yeah.
I've seen it. I bought 8 when I got in the hobby.
You should
And
add cute really.
2 years ago, when I moved everything from my 25 gallon to my 75, I had 125.
Really?
So
These also are included, the really aspects. Is it good? I put really in there.
they're really cute.
Really cute.
The other thing I'll point out real quick is it's obviously very easy to see when you have a buried female. She has eggs, she'll carry them and she'll fan them with her legs. And if you get a chance, you'll see her when they hatch, she'll flick the babies and they'll go flying and swimming off and they're tiny. The males are also less colorful. So your male shrimp will have some stripes. It'll look like a candy cane pattern almost more. It won't have as much red. Your females are your deep, dark reds. And that's, I've heard people contradict that, but that's what I was learned. That's what I go by.
Well, the
So
females
it
are
worked for me.
enormous compared to the males.
That too. Yeah, the females are
Humongous.
3 times the size of the
Yeah.
males.
Signature for sure.
Yeah, overall, I think they're very easy to keep. They eat anything. They live in anything. So. I guess that's the end of that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.